Michael had this question before, which was how to format the email. So do you mind talking about, you talked a little bit about having a single paragraph in the beginning. Can you talk about maybe subheads, font sizes,
Okay.
length of emails, number of links, some of those things to kind of give people an idea of, okay, how do I write the email?
Okay. I mean, there are different styles for different people. Typically, what works best, again, given that most people are kind of going to be reading emails on a mobile device first, usually shorter emails work better. But you can earn the right to write a longer email. So I've had a number of kind of conversations with Daniel Levis, who's the copywriter, and he writes humongously long emails, and it works for him. It's his particular style. People are expecting it from him. For most people, my suggestion is do shorter emails. I prefer to do more frequent short emails. A lot of people do a kind of one a month, really long email, but thinking, well, I don't want to overwhelm my my customers, so I'll only send one email a month. But the amount of overwhelm usually is driven by the size of the individual email. So people, again, pick up their device, look on their screen, it's a huge email. Oh, I haven't got time to read that. I'll move on. On the other hand, if you split that big long email up into 5 shorter ones and sent them out, they'd look at each individual and kind of read and go, oh yeah, oh, that was okay, yeah, good. And then they read the next one on another day. So we all have a couple of minutes a day. We don't necessarily have 15 minutes to read someone's email. So I generally recommend relatively short emails. Generally recommend fairly plain formatting. Again, people have done tests on this. Typically what happens is if your email is full of graphics, if it's got banners and all sorts of stuff, and it tends to give the impression that you're an Amazon or a Groupon or somebody trying to sell something to them. Typically, if you write an email like a good friend or a business colleague would write, usually it's fairly plain text. Of course, you have highlighted links and you can bold a heading or a subheading or whatever. I mean, I like to do that in order to make it easier to read. But don't fill it with graphics. Now, some images do work. So an image of a video, if you've got a video on a website you want people to watch, an image of the video in there with a play button will get clicked. Occasional image, maybe a small bit of branding like your picture or your logo or whatever at the top. But don't fill it with images because it almost creates a little barrier where instead of thinking here's a friend emailing me with some useful information, you begin to think here's a corporate emailing me trying to sell me something, because usually the big graphical filled emails often companies trying to sell you stuff. In terms of that, write just like a blog post or any kind of article these days, short paragraphs, short sentences, punchy, lots of white space, make it look easy to read. Try and have one link in the email, but maybe multiple times. So it's usually best not to have multiple calls to action. Of course, you can break rules every now and then, but usually it's best if you don't kind of confuse people or overwhelm them by saying, if you want this, go here, but try this as well, and I also did this. And then people kind of look at it and they're not sure, they've only got a couple of minutes, they're not sure which link to click, so they don't click any. Or they don't click the one you really want them to click. Now, if you've got people coming to a webinar, for example, you might want to think psychologically there may be some people who just on opening up the email just want to click straight away and register. There are other people who maybe need some more persuading, so you say, here's what you'll get on the webinar, and then there's a link there, so there's a second link, and then maybe you tell a little story of someone who came on a previous webinar and the value they get from it, and there's a third webinar registration link at the bottom. So you can use the same link multiple times, will tend to get you more clicks. There's a good amount of stats on that. If you Google Dan Zarella from HubSpot, he wrote a good book called The Science of Marketing, which covers data-related stuff on Twitter, on Facebook, and some of it on email marketing, like the best times of day to send emails, the best time of the week, what's the effective frequency on unsubscribe rates, etc. And he indeed found that don't confuse people with multiple different links, but if you do increase the number of links in an email, but they're all the same link, you do get more clicks. You also get less unsubscribes, it turns out, which I think is more of a side effect, but I guess it's because if you've got 4 links in an email and the bottom one is an unsubscribe link, you kind of almost a bit like the confusion sets in, you don't know which one to click, but the 3 of them are good ones to subscribe, to go to the webinar or to go to your web page or whatever.
Absolutely. Good. Yeah, I like to, and with your mobile device, as far as font size, and you can give me your thoughts on this, and then we'll move on to the next question. I like to use 16 font for Dania, like you said, with lots of space. It seems like it's easier to read on mobile. If it's, you don't want to like an 11 font or something like that would be like, oh my God, this is a headache even looking through it. So
I'd agree. I use 18-point Georgia, so
okay.
huge. Because I got, the reason I got there was I've got the fancy new iPhone, but I remember back in the days of the iPhone 4, I was looking at my phone and I couldn't read my own emails. I'm getting on a bit, and I just was I can't read this, and you don't want to be having to Zoom all the time. So I thought, who are the people with money in the world? They're usually people who are maybe perhaps older, especially my customers. They are older a little bit. Maybe their eyes have gone. Maybe they're wearing glasses like we are. Maybe it would be a good idea to send a slightly bigger font size. So I did that, and it's worked very well. The other option is to just not put any formatting of the font in an email, and then the settings on the other end they can set whether they get big or small. But I find most people, again, older people, don't know how to set the settings on their phone to get bigger font size. So I just do it for them and do a big font size. Every now and then, I got somebody complained recently. I wrote an article about using big font sizes, and somebody wrote back and said, I find your emails difficult to read in with your large font size because I use an email browser where to read my emails where I've stripped out all formatting and all line. I think I can wrote back and say, you know what? You're probably an exception.
Yeah.
You've written your own email browsing system. You're probably not my typical customer. I'm afraid you're going to have to live with an email that you find difficult to read so that normal human beings can read it.